Okay, today's daf yomi is Kesubos daf Kovav, Kesubos 106. Today's daf yomi, we're going to start on the bottom of Kufay and the Bays, around 8 or 9 lines from the bottom. Rav Hanan. So Rav Hanan, Aisile, Ugava, Kanta, Tekildi, Tebekile. Rav Hanan was a judge, and a person brought him a basket of small fish. Amalei Maya Vidasech. So Rav Hanan said to him, "Why are you doing this?" Amalei Dina Isli. He said to him, "Because I have a court case in front of you." So Rav Hanan will keep on here. Rav Hanan didn't accept it. Amalei Pasilno Chaladina. He said, Rav Hanan said, "I'm no longer qualified to be your judge. I'm disqualified because you offered me a gift." Amalei Dina Demar Lobaina. He said, "Okay, I don't need you. I don't need you to accept my gift, but for a court case. But what I do need you to accept it for is because I don't want you to prevent me from bringing bikurim, and bikurim is typically a gift that we bring to the Kohen in the base of Mikdash. But in this case, he was saying, I want to bring it to you because you're a Torah scholar. To tell you, as we learned in the Bryce, so it says about Elisha, the Ish Bami Baal Shalisha Vayavei, the Ish Elokim, Lechem Bikurim Esrim, Lechem Seorim. He brought Lechem Bikurim, Esrim Lechem Seorim, Vikarmel. He brought Lechem Bikurim, he brought 20 loaves of bread, and he brought Carmel, the Tziklono. These are what he brought. Was Elisha somebody late Bikurim? No, because Elisha was not a Kohen, and he also wasn't in Jerusalem. So why was Elisha being brought to Bikurim? Maybe Doro whoever brings a gift to a Torah scholar, Bikurim. It's as though they brought Bikurim. So we see from here, he said, I want to bring you Bikurim. So Rav Hanan said, Amalei Kibui lo ba'inan deikbo. He said, I didn't want to accept a gift, but hashta, the Amali, taima, but now that you explained to me a reasoning for it, now I'm going to accept it. So then Rav Hanan sent this person in front of Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman sent back to him, Nidana Mara Hai Gavra. So Rav Hanan sent to Rav Nachman, judge this man, the Ana Anan, I Anan, Pasilna, I'm disqualified. I can't do it. Amar, so the Rav Nachman said to himself, for the fact that he sent me this man, Shma Mina Kurive Huave. I see he must have been a relative. So Avekam Dina the Asmikame. So there was a case of orphans that was also in front of Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman said, Amar, Rav Nachman said to himself, listen. On the top of Kuf Vavam and Aleph, he said, Hayaseh v'Hayaseh. He said, look, it's a positive commandment from the Torah to judge a case, but it doesn't matter which one I do first. So I say the Kavod Torah Adif. I should do the one which honors Torah first, because Rav Hanan he's a relative of Rav Hanan, so I should judge him first. So therefore, Salke Ladina Diasmi Ba'achte Ladine. So he pushed aside the case of the orphans. And instead, he demonstrated this case, which he took this case, the case of the person who brought the basket of fish to Rav Hanan. But given the chazabal dine, yikara the ka'avilei, once this guy who brought the fish, once the person who he was litigating with saw that he was given this honor by Rav Nachman, he got nervous. Estatem tante. And he became too nervous, and his argument became closed. He wasn't confident in the courtroom. So Rav Hanan was punished for this. Rav Hanan have a ragil Eliyahu the Asigabe. Rav Hanan typically had the practice that Elijah the prophet used to come and meet with him. He used to teach him Seder Eliyahu, which is what Rashi says. These are brisas that he would learn. So so regular Eliyahu Da'asik Abed Masan Seder Eliyahu. Even the Avad Hachi, but once Rabbanan did this, he didn't necessarily do a specific sin. He acted in a way that he shouldn't have. He shouldn't have taken the fish. Once he did this, it's Dalit. Eliyahu Hanavi stopped coming. Yosef B'Tanisa, he sat and he fasted. Now, Rabbanan fasted. Maharsha explains because since he sinned by eating the fish, he now is doing tshuva by fasting. And he davened to Hashem, va'asa, and Eliyahu Hanavi came. Ki asa, but when Eliyahu came, avamabis le'belusei, then Rabbanan was very afraid of Eliyahu Hanavi. But of it tevusa, so he made a teva, he made a box, v'yasef, and he said, v'yasef kamei, and he sat in the box. So Maharsha says, because, Maharsha explains, because he made this other man afraid, therefore Rabbanan was too afraid not to sit with Eliyahu Hanavi, until Eliyahu Hanavi taught him this, the Braisos. And we see from here, there's Eliyahu Rabbah, which he taught outside the box, and Eliyahu Zuta, which he taught in the box. Mishani the Rav Yosef, in the years of Rav Yosef, Hashem Misparach was angry with the world. Amalei Rabbanu Rav Yosef, we buy Marachnes. The Rabbanan said to Rav Yosef, pray for Hashem for mercy. Amalei Lahashtu Ma Ulisha the Kiyav Rabbanan Niftar Mikamei when Ulisha. The prophet, when Rabbanan left him, Avipaishi, Trey Alfin, Umasan, they left behind 2,200 Rabbanan, and the Eden Rizla, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu was upset, when Hashem Yisbarach was upset, Elisha didn't ask for mercy. Anai by Rachme, you want me to ask for mercy? So the Gemara asked the question, how do we know that they left back 2,200 men during the time of Elisha? So now the Gemara, now we know why they're quoting this pasuk, because it says, "Vayomer Mishar so Ma'atein Zelef named Meya Ish." So the person who was serving Elisha said, "What will I place before these 100 men?" Ma'alef named Meya Ish. What does it mean? I'm going to place in front of 100 men. With name Meya Ish. If I'm going to put these 22 loaves in front of these 100 men, that's a lot of food. Each one of these 22 loaves was supposed to serve 100 men. And that's why the Meshares was saying, I don't have enough food. When the Rabbanan left Rav, they left behind 1,200 men. Alpha Masa Rabbanan. They left behind from Ravuna 800 men. Ravuna Avidarish Batlaser Amorai. Ravuna, when he spoke, he had 13 Amorai. An Amorai was somebody who repeated his words, and they stood at different parts of the room, and they repeated it so that his voice could be amplified. When the rabbis would get up from the yeshiva of Ravuna, and they shook out their coats, then they removed the dust and covered up the whole day. And some say in Eretz Yisrael, and some say, and they said in Eretz Yisrael, they have gotten up from the Mesivta of the Ravuna Bavla. So when they shook off their dust, even in Eretz Yisrael, they felt it. Rav Yosef, when the Rabbanan left, Rabba and Rav Yosef, they left behind 400 rabbis, the Karlan Avshayo Yasme, and they called themselves orphans because compared to the 2,200 from Elisha and so on. When the Rabbanan left Abaye, and when the Rabbanan left Abaye, and some say Rav Papa and some say Rav Ashi, they left behind 200 rabbis. The Karan Avshayo Yasmin the Yasmin. They call themselves the orphans of the orphans. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Radifa, Amar Rabbi Ami Medvakrin, Mumen Shabirushalayim. So since we were talking about how much the judges who were judging decrees got paid, now we're saying those who check the animals for blemishes before they could be brought as a carbon, those people are you know to Scharan the Truma Salishka. They used to get their money from the Truma Salishka. So why do they need to check for blemishes? For two things. One, for as I mentioned, to make sure the animal is kosher for a carbon, but also if it was a before, to see that it wouldn't need to be brought as a carbon if it's a firstborn animal. They used to take the money from the Truma Salishka. This was the money that was donated for the sacrifices, but it was the extra money that was left over. So that money they used to pay for the Mevakre Lumen of Yerushalayim. They would get a salary. Torah scholars who were teaching that Kohanim, the laws of Shlita, you know to install Truma Salishka. They got paid from the Truma Salishka. Amar Rav Gido, Amar Rav. The one who taught the Kmitza, he had to scoop up the flour. The Kohanim need to know how to scoop up the flour properly. The ones who taught this, they also know to install Truma Salishka. They got paid from the Truma Salishka. Amar Rav Bar Chanan Rav Yochanan. Those who were fixing the Torah scrolls, they're correcting the Torah scrolls in Jerusalem, and you know to install me Truma Salishka. They also got paid from this Truma Salishka. The women who wove the curtains of the Beis Hamikdash, no to install me Truma Salishka. They also got paid by the Truma Salishka. I say they got paid by the Kache Bedek Habayis. I say that they got paid by the money that was collected for the upkeep of the temple. Oh, parochos tachas binyan asuyos, because the parochos were basically made in the place of the building of the temple, because it's separated between the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies. So therefore, it's like the Bedek Habayis. It's like the building expense. Basically, we have a contradiction to this because it says in the Brisa, Nachim Argos Parachos, the women who wove the curtains, who based garment and the base garment was the family that made the lechem apanim. They knew how to bake the bread for the Kohanim to eat. Base of Tinas, Amaisik Torahs, and the base of Tinas, they knew how to grind up the incense for the Torahs. They all took their money from the Truma Salishka. So we see from here that the money didn't come from the Bedek Habayis, it came from the Truma Salishka. So the Gemara says, no, there's two different types of currents. There, when did the ones, those were the curtains, Rashi explains, that were opposite the entrances into the courtyard. And so therefore they were made for modesty and they weren't under the rubric of the building fund. But everything that was for the building fund, Rashi says, like the parochos that separated between the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies, which was in the second temple in the place of the Amatrux and in the place of the thick wall that Shlomo Melech made, because the second, that Rashi says, the people who built the second temple, they made it much higher. And you couldn't make it so thick that it was standing. They didn't have the physics for that. And so therefore they weren't able to make such a tall wall, so they made a curtain. So that was paid for from the Bedek Habayis. So the Amar Abizera Marav Shoshal Parochos Hayib Mikdash Sheni. There were 13 curtains in the second temple. Shiva Keneged Shiva Sharim, 7 corresponding to 7 gates. Achad Rapislo Shalecho, 1 at the entrance of the sanctuary. The Echel Rapislo Shal Ulam, and 1 at the entrance to the antechamber to the sanctuary. Beis Bitvir, and then there were 2 in the in the sanctuary, and Beis Kenegdan Ba'aliyah. So basically, there were 2 curtains, one separated from the sanctuary to the Holy of Holies, and one separated from the Holy to the Holies and the sanctuary, 2 separate curtains, and the Kohen Gadol would walk in between those 2 curtains to get from the sanctuary to the Holy of Holies. And then there were 2 corresponding to that on the second level of the Beis Hamikdash, where they stored stuff. Tana Rabbanan. So those ones that were in the sanctuary itself were made from the Kache Bedek Habayis. It's not 100% clear to me if the curtains of the Ulam and the entrance, the Ulam, which is inside the Beis Hamikdash, if that was paid for from the Bedek Habayis or from the Truma Salishka. It sounds like from Rashi And all the curtains other than the ones that separated between the Holy of Holies were from the Bedek Abayis, were from the Trumas Alishka. So the women who used to raise their children in a state of kedusha, state of tahara, state of holiness, so that they could bring the para aduma, they raised them on bedrock. We learned about this in Maseches Para and also Maseches Yuma. They had to be raised from birth, even from before birth, in a state of ritual purity. Those women were supported. They were supported from the Trumas Alishka. Abba Shol says, now they were supported by philanthropist women in Jerusalem. So Rafuna asked the question from Rav. So his question is, the the utensils that they use on the outer altar, can you pay for those utensils on the top of Kuv Vavam and Beis? Can you pay for those utensils from the Bedek Abayis, from the communal funds for the building fund? Do we say, they knew are these cliches for the purpose of the altar, and therefore Mikachi Bedek Abayis, so they came from the Bedek Abayis, or Torah carbon you knew, or they for the purpose of a sacrifice, and therefore Mitrumas Alishka, they should come from the extra Trumas Alishka. So the answer that was given to Ravuna from Rav was that they should be paid for by the Trumas Alishka. So Eisvei, Gemara challenges this in Kachal Sam. It says in the verse in Divrei Hayamim, it says when they finished and they brought everything before Melch Yol Yada, they brought all the extra money, and then they made utensils. It says in the pasuk Kachal Sam, be with them Melch Yol Yada. They brought in front of the king and Yol Yada at Shara Kesef. The rest of the money by Yasu Kilim Beis Hashem, and they made utensils, Kli Sharetz, Valos, V'Kapos, V'Klei Zav, V'Kesef, Ayum Malim, Olos, Beis Hashem, Tamid, Kol Yimei Yol Yada. They made these utensils, but then it says in the next pasuk that even when they made the Kli Sharetz, it says that they brought the leftover money that they had brought for the Bedek Abayis. Says they use it for Kli Sharetz. So this is a proof that the Kli Sharetz was made not from the Trumas Alishka, like Rav said, but it was made from the Bedek Abayis. So Rav said, responds to Rav Huna, Amarle, da Karyach Ksuve, you quoted me a pasuk from Divrei Hayamim, the person who told you Ksuvim, no Karyach, you read Ksuvim, but you didn't read Nevi. You missed an open pasuk from Nevi'im. Because it says in the Nevi'im, Beis Hashem Sipos Kesef Mizamos Mizratos Chatzotros Kol Klei Zahav Klei Kesef Min Kesef Amuva Beis Hashem. There's an open pasuk in Divrei Hayamim that it says that those who made Beis Hashem Sipos, the ones who made the utensils for the temple, that they used to make them from the Kachet Bedek Abayis, and not from the. It says that they cannot make them from the Kachet Bedek Abayis. Lo yeyasa Beis Hashem Sipos Kesef Mizmaros Mina Kesef Amuba Beis Hashem. They cannot make those utensils from the Kesef Bedek Abayis. That extra money needed to go to the workers who were building the Beis Hashem. So therefore, they weren't allowed to make the Klei Sharetz from this extra money. So Rav said to Rav Huna, you should have read this pasuk from Malachim. So the Gemara says, well, at the very least, we have these two psukim that are contradicting each other. So the Gemara answers, no, it's not a problem. Well, kasha kansha gavu lo siru, kansha gavu lo siru. So in the first case, in the second case, in the first case where they built it from the Kachet Bedek Abayis, the Kli Sharetz, because they had extra money. In the second case, they didn't have extra money, so therefore they didn't have enough. So therefore they had to use it for the Bedek Abayis and not for the Kli Sharetz. Gemara says, it doesn't matter if there's extra money. If it's collected for the Bedek Abayis, you can't use it for the Kli Sharis. So Amar Rabbi Abo taught Lev Bez and Mas. No, the court made it conditional at the beginning. And in if you'll need it for the Kli Sharis, you can use it. If not allow you the Kli Sharis, if you need it for the Bedek Abayis, they can use it, and otherwise they will use the extra for the Kli Sharis. So the Gemara says, "Tamin the Bei Rabbi Shmuel." So the Gemara says, cites a brisa from Bei Shmuel, Kli Sharis Pami Truma Salishka, that the Kli Sharis, like Rav taught, comes from the Truma Salishka, the extra money that was collected for the Karbanos. As it states at Shara Kesef, it says the extra money, quoting the verse from Divrei Yamim, Ezu Kesef Sheyesh Lo Shirayim. What is the money that is considered to have Shirayim, remnants, that you're not allowed to use it for what it was initially collected for? That's the Truma Salishka, because you can only bring the Karbanos from the money that was collected for Rosh Chodesh Nisan. But the money that was collected, that money that was collected for the Karbanos, at the end of the year, you can't bring Karbanos from that. You have to use new money. So this was the Truma Salishka. Ve'ema Shirayim Gufayu. So the Gemara says, maybe that the Pasuk is saying, this is not, there's two types of money. There was the money that was left over from the Truma Salishka, and then there was the money that remained that they never brought out from the collection for the Truma Salishka. So therefore, maybe that's what they're referring to. The money that remained back in the treasury. And maybe that's what they would make the Kli Sharis for. So the Gemara says, look at the Rashi. Not from the actual truma, but the money that remained, not the money that they brought out to pay for the karbanos, but the money that remained in the lishka, in the treasury. So basically there were two collections, and both of them were designated for the karbanos, but one had already been put into use. And so maybe this is from the extra money that you can't use that for the maybe that's the money that you could use for the Kli Sharis. So the Gemara says, Kedama Rabba, Ola Rishona. So like Rabba said in the explanation of this brisa, that when it says in the verse Ha'olah, this teaches us Ola Rishona. The Ola that's said in that pasuk is the Ola Tamid. Ha'chinami, here also we say with respect to this passage, Ha'kasef, when it says the money that you're supposed to use for the Kli Sharis, that's Kesef Rishon, meaning the first money that they would put into the charity boxes, if that was, and they brought out to pay for their karbanos, that was what was used for the Kli Sharis and not the remnants. Gemara says, Meisvei, Gemara challenges this idea. It says, Aktoras kol karbanot tzibor, ban mitruma salishka. The Ktoras and all the communal offerings come from the truma salishka. The mizbeach hazav uvono Kli Sharis ban mimosar nesachim. This is a question on Rav, because it says that it says right here that the golden altar and the Avona and the Kli Sharis, they don't come from the Truma Salishka, they come from the extra money that was collected for the Nisachim, for the flour and the oil that they would purchase. So what does it mean, Moser Nisachim? So we learned about this in Menachos. Rav Chia Bar Yosef said that this was the basically that when the seller sells you something, it adds on extra and it overflows a little bit, and then you flatten it out when you bring it. So that extra money they would sell. And so that's one possibility that the Gemara Sachem says. And some say that Rabbi Yochanan says that this is the extra Nesachim, that when they purchase something, that they're going to buy the Nesachim, and then they made a little profit. If the price went down, they had a little extra money. So this extra money from the Nesachim was used for the Mizbeach HaOlah. Excuse me, that was used for, that's where we paid for, that's paid for the Levon and the Klisharis came, the Mizbeach HaZav and the Levon and the Klisharis come from the Moshe Nesachim. Mizbeach HaOlah and the Lashakos, the Azaros, Bamikache Bedek Habayis. And Mizbeach HaOlah and the Lashakos and the Azaros, the chambers and the courtyards, they came from the Kache Bedek Habayis. With the exception of the wall for the Ezras Nashim, the Chel, and the walls of the city, they come from the Shiari Lashakos. Zui Shishanino, and that's which we learned. The walls of the city and its towers, they come from the Shiari Alishka. So we see from here that the Klisharis does not come from the Trumas Alishka, it comes from the Mosar Nesachim. So the Gemara says, okay, it's in Machokas Tanayim, Tanai. It's not Moser Truma Mayu Osimba. What will they do with the extra Truma? Mikue Zahav. So this was the extra money that we've been calling the Truma Salishka. What would they do with that? They would make Mikue Zahav Tzipuye Bebeis Gache Kadosh, and they would buy this flat gold, this gold strands for the Kodesh Kadashim, for the roof and the floor of the walls and the floors of the Kodesh Kadashim. And Rabbi Shmuel says, Mosar Peiros, which we'll talk about in a moment what that is, that went to pay for the dessert of the altar. What is that? That would, if God forbid the Mizbeach was ever empty, they will purchase karbanos, animals to bring as karbanos, so that the Mizbeach will never be empty. And Mosar Truma, and so here they argue and they say Moser Truma was also for the Klisharis. So that's what Rabbi Shmuel says here. The Moser Truma was for the Klisharis, which was not what the Tanakama said. The Tanakama said Moser Truma was for the Rikuei Zav Tzipor Beis Kachei Kadash. And Rabbi Akiva says a third opinion, Moser Truma and Kate Samizbeach. The leftover Truma went for the Kate Samizbeach, the dessert for the oil for the altar. And Moser Misachim with Klisharis. The extra Misachim went for the Klisharis. Chanina's got a Kohanim over Moser Misachim with Kate Samizbeach, Moser Sham Klisharis. Bezev Bezeh Lo Ayumodim in Paris. And neither Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Chanina's got a Kohanim agreed with about Moser Paris, that there was anything extra for Hektish on the Moser Paris, because according to them they didn't use the Moser Paris for anything. So the Gemara now asks Paris Mahi, what does it mean this extra Paris? The Tanya Moser Truma Mayos. What would they do with the Moser Truma? With the extra money from Truma Salishka? Welcome Paris Bezol Mokra Sambiyoker. They would buy the food cheap and they would sell it. And the temple would do business. And the altar, the rest, the extra, they would use the money for the Ketz HaMizbeach. And this is what we said when we say that the extra money was used for the Ketz HaMizbeach. What does it mean? Neither one would be modeh by Peros. What does that mean? It's not Moser Shiari Alishka Mario. What would they do with the extra Shiari Alishka? They would buy the wine, the oil, and the flour, and the extra money would go for the temple. That's the position of Rabbi Shmuel. Where if Rabbi Akiva says, "Ein mistakrin b'shel hektish," so Rabbi Akiva said they never used the extra money from the hektish and did business with it. Afro b'shel aniyim, and they also didn't use the extra money of the poor people. Why b'shel hektish my time? Well, why don't they take the extra money from the Trumasa Lishka and use it to do business? Because they have a concept, there can be no poverty in a place of wealth. We don't want the temple to look like it's a businessman, like it's trying to make a buck, like arbitrage. It's no good. That is there can be poverty in a place of wealth. And why can we not do business with the money from the poor people so we can bring in extra money for the poor people? And maybe there'll be a poor person who shows up and you won't have any money. You need the money to be available in order to support him at all times. So maybe he'll show up at the moment where you've invested in it. Okay, we'll stop here. If anybody has questions, I'm happy to address it.